When I was growing up in the beloved American education system, my favorite subject, like many dorks, was history. History is the greatest story ever told, and I learned about all types of history that Uncle Sam deemed to be relevant enough for me to know to function as a tax drone when I grew up. But sometimes we don't learn about topics that are strangely important. Now, let me pose a question to you, dear viewer. Off the top of your head, what are some of the bloodiest wars that have ever occurred in human history? I'll give you a second to think about that. Okay, well, time's up. I'm sure you listed off a few notable ones in your head or maybe out loud. World War I and its sequel, World War II, maybe the Crusades, the Mongol conquests, or even the Russian Civil War. And, well, yes, all of those are correct. But what if I told you there was another conflict? A conflict so large it actually is counted as the second bloodiest conflict in human history. And you may have never even heard of it. Well, I'm going to tell you that that's exactly what I'm going to tell you. The Taiping Rebellion that occurred in China through the mid-1850s is exactly that. So, where do we start with this? Time to open your textbooks because it's time for Chinese history lesson. During the 1800s, China was controlled by the Qing dynasty, and things were not going well. Several natural disasters had destroyed important farmlands, causing economic crises. The military was getting dogged on by foreign nations. Rents were skyrocketing, farmers were being taxed out the ass, and in the meantime, the population of China had nearly doubled in the past 50 years or so, while the amount of cultivatable farmland remained the same. The people didn't like the ethnically controlled Manchu government for all of these reasons and many more. Particularly in the southern regions of the country, its power was often overruled by strong local authorities. The Hakka ethnic group, a subgroup of Han Chinese in particular, really did not like the Manchu government down south. All the while, Christian missionaries from the West continued to spread the word of sweet Lord Jesus. That's the macro view of the nation at this point, which is important to understand in order to fully process how the following events were even able to occur. Anyways, let's dive into the micro view of our story, shall we? There was a young man named Hong Haochu. I'm going to say his name wrong, but that's how it is. Hong was a bright young Hakka male living in the Guangdong district of China. His family had a lot of faith in him and his intelligence, and he had dreams of becoming a scholar official for the government. Becoming so would bring wealth and honor to he and his family, something that was important during these ever so unstable times the nation was already going through. Unfortunately, Hong wasn't the brightest crayon in the toolbox, and in 1837, he'd fail the exam to become one of these scholar officials for the third time. Hong was naturally very embarrassed, but to a point that he suffered a life-changing nervous breakdown. While he was recovering from said breakdown, he would have these very vivid dreams and visions of visiting heaven, where he found out that he had a heavenly celestial family that was different than his on earth, and his spirit father laid down some wisdom for him. Hong believed that his spirit father had told him that the men of earth were worshipping demons, and also told him that he needed to change his name to Hong. I don't know what his name was before. And he also saw visions of Confucius being punished by his cosmic space dad father as well. Around 6 years later, Hong, he failed the test for a fourth time. And this is when stuff started to get weird. Presumably, he started having more nervous breakdowns and becoming more mentally unstable. And at this point, his cousin came to visit him and ended up giving Hong some Christian literature from the Protestant missionaries that Hong, he really looked into the whole Christianity thing quite seriously as a result. Now, for those aforementioned visions, they had been on his mind for a while, and learning the story of Jesus and the Father, that was the key to unlock the interpreted meaning of these cryptic messages. Obviously, in his visions, his celestial father was actually God, and his celestial spirit brother was actually Jesus Christ, and God had been telling him to rid the world of demons that included the Qing dynasty, all of the Manchu ethnic group, and Confucianism. Yeah, that makes total sense and has nothing to do with failing the test for 4 times, now does it? Now, over the next few years, Hong would go around southern China preaching his message, and he managed to gain, quite the following in just a few years. But he wasn't just preaching Christianity. Hong had infused elements of his new faith with Taoism and, ironically, Confucianism, which he presented as the restoration of an ancient Chinese religion, the Taiping religion. His followers established his first church, if you want to call it that, in 1844, called the God-Worshipping Society. By the late 1840s, the God-Worshipping Society had become quite large. There was members all over southern China, and even missionaries from the West were becoming unsettled by its teachings. One American missionary even refused to baptize Hong in 1847, and later remarked that Hong and his followers were, quote, bent on making their burlesque religion serve their political purpose. The Qing government had actively attempted to suppress the growth of the movement to no avail. Somewhat ironically, it fueled the perceived legitimacy of the movement, causing many more to join and resulting in the Taiping faith to grow even more. Now, in the 1850s is when things went from, oh look, a weird cult, to, oh shit, they're gonna overthrow the government. Qing army forces started to persecute the God-Worshipping Society and its followers in the southern regions of China, which resulted in a small battle in the December of 1850, causing deaths on both sides. To Hong and his followers, this was their sign to start the rebellion. In the following month, an army of 10,000 rebel forces marched on the Qing soldiers and pushed them back north to the city of Xinjiang. A year later, Mr. Hong would declare himself the heavenly king of the heavenly kingdom of peace. All the while, the Qing army's reinforced legions started to close in on them. Now, the Taipings, which were the army that Hong was in charge of and his followers, would march north to escape them, while also managing to capture 3 separate cities in the process. At this point, the Taiping army and its leadership also established a short-lived partnership with triad organizations. Triad organizations essentially being transnational Chinese crime syndicates. The triads also had anti-Qing sentiment, so it just worked out well. And they also had access to embedded soldiers within the Qing armies, allowing for key intel to be relayed to the Taiping army. But this partnership was short-lived, and it came to an end in late 1853 when the Taiping forces, now amounting to 500,000 people, captured the city of Nanjing and renamed it to Tianjin, or Heavenly Kingdom, and they deemed it to be their new capital for their micronation and movement. Now, remember how Hong was ethnically Hakka and how he hated the Manchus with a passion? Yeah, well, Xinjiang was a Manchu city. So when the Taiping army took the city, they killed every single male resident, and then they proceeded to push all of the women out of the city, and how do I put this? They lit them on fire. Not very holy stuff now, is it? At this point, the rebellion was more like a full-scale war, and in fact, it just was a total war. Hong deployed large battalions of troops both north and west as a means to relieve the military pressure on his holy capital. The northern campaign was a complete failure, causing massive casualties on both sides, but the western one, it worked out well. The warfare of this time was particularly brutal. I'd like to note this. It was small arms warfare. There wasn't really much artillery or anything. So the way battles went down was that large forces on both sides just rushed a battlefield and killed the shit out of each other, and then there were no decisive victories. Usually both sides left the field mangled with tens of thousands of deaths. The main strategy of the Taiping forces was to take over cities, occupy them, and then recruit local disgruntled farmers and peasants to fight on their behalf. It eventually just turned into just making every single person fight if they didn't flee. All the while, Hong ruled from his holy kingdom miles and miles away. Up until late 1853, Hong had ruled and issued decrees in person, but he decided that wasn't fun anymore as he became more and more reclusive. Eventually, he would only communicate with his leadership team and overall the masses through just writing. Sounds like the CEO of my company, honestly. All the while, living in a hyper-luxurious mansion surrounded by harems of women and buffets of food. Very, very Christ-like, if you ask me. Throughout the next few years, many of Hong's top advisors became pretty much just sick of him, basically, and they tried to overthrow his rule, all of which were promptly executed, which left the Taiping military under the control of just one general, all the while the other leaders tried to establish relationships with the European countries to support their cause. Now, Europe's official stance was neutrality, but they did supply military advisors to the Qing military in secret at this point. By 1860, the Taiping forces had repulsed the Qing army away from Nanjing, and at a greater level, the entire region, which resulted in an opportunity for the Taiping to attack the heart of the Qing Empire's wealthiest regions, which they successfully managed to do, taking 3 of the Qing Empire's wealthiest cities. But this would also start the beginning of the end for the Chinese Jesus rebel forces. The Taiping army would attack Shanghai for 15 months unsuccessfully, the Qing army now openly being led by European military commanders that repulsed them successfully would become known as the ever-victorious army. God, these names are so dramatic. Anyways, in 1861, a new emperor would take over the Qing army, and with help from the British Royal Navy, they were able to push the Taiping back for a bit. The Chinese Jesus forces would launch one last major eastern offensive, taking 3 cities and even surrounding Shanghai, but yet again being unable to take the ever so important city. And by 1863, the Qing forces had started massive counterattacks into Taiping territory. The siege of Nanjing began with a massive victory from the outnumbered Qing forces. Over the next few years, the city began to collapse internally, and more Qing leaders and generals started to push into their territory. On a side note, one of the Qing generals that pushed in failed so incredibly hard that he tried to leave the world, if you know what I mean, but the other ones were doing pretty good. Hong declared that God would defend the Nanjing city in his holy capital, but this ended up not being the case. Everyone started to starve, and out of starvation, Hong started eating wild vegetables that he found in the hills that gave him severe food poisoning, resulting in his death in 1864. His 15-year-old son would take over the rebellion, but ultimately the city fell in late July, and all of the other Taiping princes, Hong's sons, were rounded up and executed. But even though Hong and his sons were dead, the rebellion continued to have lasting effects for several more years. There were still hundreds of thousands of Taiping soldiers fighting in the outskirts of the countryside, spilling over into what is now Vietnam. One of Hong's disciples, who had named himself the King of Dingling, held out until 1868, resulting in devastation for the northern regions of Vietnam and its populations. A lot of the Taiping army battalions ended up just turning into roaming marauders due to a lack of leadership, and they would wreak havoc on trade routes and besiege villages and cities until the last one was disbanded or eradicated around 1890. Throughout its official 14-year run between 1850 to 1864, the Taiping Rebellion ended up being one of the deadliest conflicts in recorded human history. With no accurate census at the time, the death tolls are all largely speculative, but the most commonly cited amount is roughly 20 to 30 million people, while others have estimated almost 100 million people died. Now, these were not all soldiers dying on the battlefield, rather a combination of soldier deaths, cities being sieged, ethnic cleanses, and widespread famine caused by the ongoing war. The Taiping Rebellion was a total war. This means that every citizen who didn't flee Taiping-controlled land was forced to fight for the cause. That's why so many people died. Learning about this conflict was pretty crazy. In all honesty, whenever I learn about Chinese history, it always sends me for a loop seeing how many people die in these conflicts. It's so wild. But what obviously stuck out to me more about this conflict was its leader and its origins. I think to anyone who hears about this conflict, it's clear to see that Hong was mentally unstable, but that the world they lived in was also largely unstable. Throughout history, there have been countless rebellions fueled by disdain for an abusive or weak government, and adding a layer of race war within this context, coupled with essentially a cult leader proclaiming that the ethnic group that he didn't like were all demons. Yeah, it led to a lot of deaths. It's also very interesting to me seeing how Hong was able to capitalize on religion as a form of political power against the Qing dynasty. I'm sure there were many people that were all in on him being Jesus Part 2, but I'm also certain that a majority of his support came from the anti-Manchu and anti-government sentiments that he was spewing in his messaging. And when that type of rhetoric goes hand in hand with someone claiming to be the Messiah, the people who are desperate for a change will cling on to it out of hope and just desperation. Now, I didn't cover every minute detail because I'm not a Chinese history expert by any means, and to cover all of this would require a large book or a 10-hour video essay, which I'm not doing, but I wanted to give a simple overview of the events and the reasons that unfolded in the time that Chinese Jesus caused one of the bloodiest wars in recent history. I hope you enjoyed today's Chinese history lesson. What did you think about it? I haven't done a history video in quite a bit here, so yeah, what do you think? New stickers launching in like a month. My art guy made awesome ones. They're super dope. You're gonna love them. They're bumper stickers. It's not just my logo this time. They're really cool. As always, I have a Patreon. Please subscribe to my Patreon where I post bi-weekly newsletters, as well as I'm going to post a pseudo long form video that's less of a edited one, but just kind of me talking about topics that are not cool enough to be covered on my YouTube channel normally. Did I miss anything? What did you think? Leave a comment, shoot me an email. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day. Goodbye.